And hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Michael Harding for On the Arts. Can you hear me all right there, Kawhi?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, so everybody knows this is On the Arts, where we try to blow the lid off of all of those little artistic secrets that we have around in St. George, where we want everyone to get to know all of the artists that we have available to us. Now, please know that today we are going to be focusing on music, particularly the cello and stringed instruments with our fabulous guest, Kawhi Yu. But also, we've got quite a lineup coming up later on as well. On September 13th, which is, just so everybody knows, the birthday of your favorite radio host, the one who's talking right now. I'll be somewhere beyond 20, let's just put it that way. On September 13th, this coming Thursday, we'll have Heidi Anderson, who is a professional singer, an actor, a director, and a private voice and acting teacher. She's also currently directing Young Frankenstein at the Stage Door Theater, and that's going to take place at the Electric Theater downtown. So she's quite a jack of all trades when it comes to the arts. On September 18th, we'll have Mayor John Pike on the show so that we can talk about all sorts of artistic things in St. George. We had a fantastic conversation with Mayor Pike, just not quite a year ago, but it was a wonderful time where we talked about the possibilities of here in St. George. Now, we also have on September 20th, Mickalene Ibsen, who is a local singer and songwriter who's making quite a name for herself. On September 25th, we'll have Chase McPhee, who is a stand-up comedian, as well as some folks from here at DSU, Dixie State University, who will be talking about some very exciting installation theater that's happening, as well as some political theater. That's just a sampling of who we have coming on this show. We're going to be having a mix of music. We're going to be getting some visual artists in here after a while, some folks who will come in and talk to us about painting and sculpture and things of that sort, as well as some curators. We're hoping to have Kathy Cecilwitz back on from the Sears Gallery here at Dixie State, as well as some people from the Southern Utah Museum of Art up north in Cedar City. As well, we'd like to have some dancer representatives from Cedar City Junior Ballet and some other dance associations here in Southern Utah. So we have quite an exciting lineup of people to come on, and there is no lack of wonderful artists who are around here who we'd love to get to know. Again, to blow the lid off of all of those secrets. We don't want any place to be a secret place where only the elite come and enjoy the art that we have to offer. We want everyone to know everything that's out there. Now, I usually start every segment with a personal experience that I have that connects me to the guests that we have on the show. And I thought today was literally a very poignant day, especially because this is September 11th here in America. And we are, strangely, quite a few years away from this event that touched us all so deeply. And I remember exactly where I was, as so many people have with so many events in America. I was in Seattle, and I was working as an actor. I had a show that was getting ready to open at the Intiman Theater, and I remember just waking up in the morning, and of course, Seattle, we were 3 hours behind New York, and I got up pretty early in the day, and I got ready to go to work. I was doing a day job at the time, and then rehearsing in the afternoons and evenings. I was working at Seattle Children's Hospital, and my shift actually started at 8 in the morning. And I went out, and I got in my car, and I started driving, and I turned on the radio, as you know, was my habit. And I will never forget what I heard. And as soon as I clicked on the radio, the phrase I heard was, "My God, it's collapsing." And I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea if I was listening to George Orson Welles or anything like Orson Welles. His name wasn't George. I didn't know what I was hearing. And as I listened, I came to realize that there was something very serious happening. And I remember just being stunned and craving going to the theater that evening just to get away a little bit, just to have something to work on, which was art, something that would help me deal with what was happening that day. I don't know if you're familiar, Kawhi, with the movie The Dresser with Albert Finney. And there's this wonderful scene, of course, in World War II, not a wonderful circumstance, but a wonderful scene wherein a man is sitting outside of his home, and it has been completely destroyed by the bombs. And he's just sitting there devastated. He has literally lost everything. And it's a wonderful, wonderful scene where Albert Finney, who's the lead actor of a company, walks up to him and takes out a book of tickets and rips one out, and he says, "We're doing King Lear tonight. I trust it will help." And a lot of people wonder, how can art help? How can art soothe? Well, with this terrible event that happened in America back in 2001 on September 11th, I remember 2 days later there was a tribute to all of the firefighters, to all of the fallen, all of the first responders. And it was at Seattle Center, and it was this beautiful, beautiful event where everyone, it seemed, in Seattle came to gather just to mourn, just to show support. There were cultures all around, many different international cultures represented, and some of them had tables set up. There was the Sikh religion. They had representatives who said, "Look, we are with you." And you could see every ethnicity, every race, every country that you could think of represented. And it was incredibly touching as we sat in the middle of Seattle Center when all of a sudden we heard this beautiful music, and it was a cello. And the cello was actually placed on top of, in Seattle Center, I don't know, if you know, they have the Intiman Theater, Seattle Rep, Seattle Children's Theater. They have an art museum right there in the Space Needle. And this cellist had been placed on a scaffold. So he was playing probably about 30 feet in the air off on one side of the Seattle Center Mall. And I remember just being touched by how absolutely beautiful and simple the music was, as he played, all sorts of, I hesitate to say favorites, but, things like Danny Boy, which, amazingly enough, we do actually have a recording of today, and we'll get into that, not of that performance necessarily, but it just brought us all together. I was amazed at the unification that was possible from music, and particularly this instrument. And ever since then, I've been a personal fan of the cello. I use it quite often as a theater director. When I put my soundscapes together for shows, I usually start with cello. My brother, I've mentioned before, is a concert pianist, and he actually goes around with a cellist named Kenneth Law. And they've actually traveled all over the world playing together some beautiful, wonderful music. And I have several of his recordings. I have, of course, the tremendous cellist Yo-Yo Ma, who most people know. I had the pleasure of interviewing his son not too long ago, just about 2 weeks ago, on a totally unrelated matter. But the cello has been such a big part of my artistic life. It's so exciting to meet someone who has dedicated their life to that. And that is my guest here in the studio today, Kawai Yu. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Such a pleasure to be here.
Okay, gotcha. And Kawai, we're having just a little bit of trouble here hearing you. Try that again.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
There you are. Yeah, we had one of the mics up that should not have been up at that point. But anyways, Kawai, it's a pleasure having you here. And I have to tell you, I've passed you in the hallways of the Eccles Fine Arts Building where we both teach.
Right.
And by the way, I can come in at any hour of the day, 24/7, and I can always count on Kawai walking down the hall with a big smile on his face saying, "Hey, how are you?" And I have to say, it's amazing how even being in the same building together,
right,
you don't know very much about each other. Mm-hmm. And I tell all of my guests, I do a little bit of stalking, not in a creepy way, but stalking. And I have to tell you, Kawai, I am blown away with your resume on this. Kawai, I have to ask you, first off, what brought you here to St. George?
It's the position at Dixie State that to teach cello, and all my life I've been passionate about, performing and teaching. And when Dixie State University were looking for a professor to build a cello program with the string music department to help out and be a teacher here, so I was very excited. So, and I moved here, and of course, things come along with is the beautiful Utah landscape that I really enjoy.
Absolutely, we have a lot of artists who are really inspired by the Red Rock and the just the beautiful vastness that's here. As a matter of fact, in the Sears Gallery, which I mentioned, there's a display of a lot of artists' work that do the landscape work and such, and how wonderful. Well, Kawai, let's go all the way back to the beginning,
okay,
if you will.
Yeah.
Now, I've got here on your biography that you're from Hong Kong initially. Gotcha. Tell us about that. What is the music scene in Hong Kong? How did you as a child get into this?
So I was fortunate to grow up in a musical family, and my mother is a mezzo soprano, and my father is a professor, but he also plays piano and really enjoy music. So at a young age, I start learning the music, and there's quite a culture of learning music in Hong Kong when I was in school, and in high school, I was particularly very active, both in choir and in orchestra, and I helped conduct the choir and be the cello principal cellist in the orchestra, and then I also play in the youth orchestra, and then gradually build up that interest in music, but it is actually playing in chamber music, playing in a piano trio group with two of my friends, that gradually really inspired me to continue and actually be focused and take music as the path, my career pathway. So.
But so when you say that you got into music young and would have it with the culture of Hong Kong, and your father was a pianist and your mother a mezzo-soprano, so many of us started with piano lessons and we went drudgingly to the lesson saying, do we really have to? Did you start on the cello? Did you know that you wanted to get into it?
So that's actually a story about it. In fact, I did start with the cello, and I was 2 years old.
2 years old on the cello?
No.
Oh,
well,
got
2
it.
years old, that's a story. When my my family was in Europe, in France at that time, and and then my parents worried about me because I wasn't talking at all. But at that time, my mom's, who is a singer, one of his best friend is a cello teacher and a cellist who lived next door. And then when my mom and my father was a little worried, oh, this 2 years old son wasn't talking at all. I was like worried. But then the teacher told them, like, wait, no, he talked to me all the time. In fact, he when I practiced cello, he actually leaned on and talked to me. It's turned out that maybe because we were in France, so people were speaking French that time, and then our neighbor, there's Filipino, so they're speaking English, and then there's a Japanese friends nearby. So I probably, as a 2-year-old, I was confused with so many languages, but I was definitely attracted to the beautiful sound of the cello. Probably the big instrument. It looks really attractive, and
especially to a 2-year-old.
Right. So that teacher was really nice to me. So actually, eventually, that teacher came back to Hong Kong, and my mom said, "Oh, why don't we start lesson when we get back?" And that's when I started. But that was probably about 5 years or 6 years when I actually started.
Got it.
But I did take piano lessons with my mom a little bit, and eventual voice lesson with her. Yeah.
Got it. And you did mention that you sung in choirs and things of that sort.
Yes.
Gotcha. So you really did travel around. I love that you said that it was confusing having all the languages, or perhaps that was what was going on. But that one language that was consistent everywhere you went, the sound of the cello or music. I love that about it.
Me too.
And so after that, let's see, you started with your cello lessons, and that was about 5. And where did you go with it? What did you do? Did you just perform with schools? You mentioned that you were in a trio that you played with. When did that start?
So, first of all, when I get started lessons, but like other kids, when you started, you have like 5 minutes of interest, and then you kind of, I have other things to do.
Done with that. Thank you.
So there is part of that parents kind of encouragement and sometimes force me to do it.
Right.
The practice and stuff. But at that time, I was in the school, and they were needing a cellist in, believe me or not, it's the Chinese orchestra. They play traditional Chinese instrument, but they do need cellos. And so I was invited to join that ensemble, and after the first rehearsal, that really changed my life, because I realized, wait a minute. Besides practicing myself, like my parents forced me to do it, but I realized that I actually enjoy being part of that perfect harmony, and I'm important in that, and I also kind of make friends in the orchestra. So I really enjoyed it. And then I met some of those friends actually in college. Those two really good friends. I was actually considering doing history major, world history. I was very interested in studying history.
Gotcha.
And then when I get to college, then I decided, well, I'll try music. And then I got to play with these two friends. One is a pianist and clarinetist, and then we really have great chemistry together. And I realized, wow, it's like really, really intimate conversation together, and we can bring out a lot of beautiful messages from the composers to the audience. So I really enjoyed that experience, and it really inspired me. Yes, I want to be a performer.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned that you went to school. Where did you go after your work in China?
So I did my college at Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Right.
And then it happened at the same time when my family immigrated to the state. So I moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. I love Atlanta.
Yeah, it's a great place. And I stayed there for a year and actually did my master, started my master, but then I decided I want to study with a teacher at Indiana University, where they have really good music program at that time, with Professor Helge Winold, who I still have in touch. And so that's when I did my master.
Was that at Bloomington?
Bloomington, Indiana, right.
Gotcha.
Right.
My brother went there, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, he worked with Menachem Pressler there.
Okay.
And,
oh, really? Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, Pressler, yeah. Menachem Pressler is still there.
Absolutely. I mean, they have a tremendous reputation for their music programs and such. And how wonderful. When were you there?
So that was 2005 and 2006.
Okay, gotcha. My brother was a little ways out of it by then.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic. And that was for your Masters of Music?
Yes, that's for my master's. And then after I graduated there, I continued at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana.
Gotcha. Also with quite a good reputation.
Right.
Now, I'm going to read a title to you, and I would love to just see your reaction. And by the way, if you'd like to see the reaction of Kawai or see any of this interview, you are more than welcome to go to Facebook and go to Radio St. George, and you'll see a live feed. Now, if you don't have a computer available right now or you don't have the time, please know that you can still go to Radio St. George at any time. This interview will be archived, the actual video of it. As well, we are broadcasting live on YouTube right now. But yeah, just keep your eye out for this. Now, to get the reaction of Kawai, I'm going to read, this title is quite a mouthful, so this may take me a second. When Concerto Meets Song Cycle, a study of vocal influences in Robert Schumann's Cello Concerto in A minor, Opus 129, with reference to his Dichterlieb, Opus 48. So, Kawai, what is your reaction? I'm loving watching you right now. You have this delighted look on your face.
Oh, my. Yeah.
That's it. What is that, Kawai?
So that's my doctoral thesis title.
That's actually that's quite detailed when it comes down to it. What I mean, we're talking about concertos meeting song cycles, and certainly getting into the works of Robert Schumann.
Robert Schumann.
And let's see, why? What drew you to this?
Well, first of all, I really personally enjoy Robert Schumann, 19th century German composer's music, and he wrote this. Of course, the title of this about the cello concerto that he wrote, and this is composed during his last late period, like before close to his death. But this piece particularly because of related to his life with a lot of things. That he's always being criticized by scholars and performers because Schumann had a little mental breakdown when he got late, and then people say, "Oh yeah, this is the music of the crazy man."
Yeah, so many artists.
So they kind of criticize like, "Oh, they're structured and not coherent, and there are things in certain movement that doesn't work as well for the orchestra." And Mahler, the famous composer in the 19th century, and even Shostakovich, a Russian composer in the 20th century, they reorchestrated, like put on different instruments for his Schumann symphonies. And in particular case, Shostakovich changed some orchestration of this cello concerto. So I was trying to kind of, ask people to reconsider the criticism and, in my opinion, prejudice against this piece, and in an interesting way. And since it's also my doctoral thesis, I want to use the material that represent me well all my life. And besides cello, another thing that we also talk about is singing, is voice. And Schumann is very famous as a vocal composer. He wrote so many German art songs, or German lieder. So maybe a lot of the things that people, when they think about from a standpoint of symphonies, maybe they criticize Schumann. What if he was having vocal influences in mind when he wrote this cello concerto? So I was looking into his songs and compare and see if there's any consistency, particularly to his early songs.
Right.
Because people, when they criticize his late life because his mental breakdown, so yeah, he must be. But if the music is actually consistent in terms of several things that I looked at, I look at the structure of the music, I look at the poetic harmonies that he used, and rhetoric.
Right.
As well as the orchestration, how very similar to piano and voice, the close partnership, chamber music style of that. In this piece. So he might be actually thinking about, chamber music when he wrote this orchestral piece, instead of what people think, orchestra piece is not got to be really grand and big. So that's one of the main reasons that I put into this. And part of that project include also my transcription of that Schumann cello concerto for cello and string quartet, which is actually published eventually. And
you segued into my next point here, your publications and such. Yeah, keep going on that. What's happened with that? You've published it. What happens with it once you've done that?
So and I performed it in my doctoral recital, and it's a great way to look at that, because when I'm in my research, I'm looking at how, from the angle of from the perspective of chamber music, looking at orchestral work. So what about if I actually play that piece in a chamber setting, which is like a string quartet?
Right.
And it's and it's not coincidence, but Schumann himself actually wanted to write a transcription for string quartet,
right.
Which is actually a very common practice in the 19th century. And to have a concerto, for example, like Chopin's piano concerto, they have people perform that with string quartet and piano solo quite often. Very different from nowadays when we perform in big concert hall. They perform in private homes with some nobility people and
right.
patrons to be there. So I decided to do that because but the publisher rejected Schumann, saying that that's not going to work very well. It's not going to earn much money, for a cello concerto versus
right.
versus a violin concerto or piano concerto. But so he didn't. So far we couldn't find specific autograph or manuscript of him actually doing that. But I decided to do it, and partly because it's with the historical performance practice, it's appropriate, but it also part of my research, and also practical reason, because think about students when they're trying to learn the concerto. Many of them may not have a chance, or definitely don't have the money to hire a big orchestra to
right.
accompany them. But they possibly can get a string quartet, friends of quartet, to accompany them, the students. And so there's the value of that as well. So, and part of that project, on the other hand, I also arranged the Dix de Liber.
Right. I'm glad I pronounced that sort of correctly there.
Right. And I kind of rearranged that also for cello and string quartet instead of piano and voice. So I get that really closeness between voice, vocal music, and instrumental music. So, and that's part of me. This is really representing myself. And I thought, well, when you have to graduate, with a doctoral thesis, terminal degree, what representative of yourself? And I decided this is a wonderful project to be.
Well, you talk about that, doing that in school. Has this continued for you? Do you do research right now? I mean, working at Dixie State, or even just on your own?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I have presented part of that thesis in one time I presented in a conference in Hong Kong. in the one of the universities there. So, and I definitely plan on doing more with that as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, you've been working with music that's already been written. Do you write your own? Are you a composer as well?
I did write some music, and in fact, in college, so I talk about I'm very interested in studying history, and I decided to study music. And then when I decided to study music, at first I thought I would be a composer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, focus on composing. So I did write, like trio, music for voice and then orchestra work. I did write one, and then and some other songs, quite a bit of sometimes for hymns for church.
Got it.
As well. But I did also do quite a bit of arrangements. In fact, a lot of arranging with the cello ensemble that particularly today we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We're actually on our way to talking about that. One or two things before we actually get to that and such. You've done quite a bit of conducting.
Yes.
In your life. Tell us about that. I mean, we've talked about composition and research and playing the cello and growing up with musical parents. What about the conducting?
Yeah. I've always enjoyed watching conductors, orchestra conductors and choir conductors, when they perform in concerts. I feel like, but it's a very special place to be there, that you're waving your hands, but the musicians are making the music, and you are part of it. You kind of part of that main the soul of that music making, and I enjoy that, and I sometimes I feel like, well, I really need to be well prepared before I could conduct a piece, and so I have developed early interests, and did study a little bit conducting in college, and then have some workshops, and took some lessons on conducting, and nowadays when you teach and music, whether it is string instrumental music or vocal music, having conducting it's really helpful. At least the background, it helps you to work with different students,
right?
And it ended up to be perfect in this situation that, when I started the cello ensemble, then you do need somebody to conduct. Absolutely,
somebody in the front. Well, that's right. One of my all-time favorite conductors is, of course, Leonard Bernstein.
Yes.
I love watching him and just how animated he is. A lot of people think it's just standing up there and beating time, but man, to watch him feel the music and to work not only to guide the orchestra, but to be part of the orchestra, and so many other wonderful conductors out there.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, that's great. I just have that pleasure to study one of Bernstein's student, Maurice Perez, at Queen's in New York in a conducting workshop, and that. Yeah, it's so fantastic to learn from the conductor was so inspired by Bernstein, and I learned some really wonderful skills that definitely very useful.
Well, and of course, thank you for letting me do these small digressions before we got to.
I love them.
I have these shows kind of outlined, but I never, ever stick to it. I have to be quite honest with you. These conversations go everywhere. But something I definitely want to touch on that you wanted to touch on a little before this was the cello work, the ensemble and such. Tell us about that.
So, particularly this Friday, Saturday, we have the Dixie State University Cello Festival, and this is the third time I'm organizing it. This is since 2016. Always have been on September. And one of the main mission is to promote learning, enjoyment, and also community involvement through cello playing. Mm-hmm. And it's 2 days of events. There are two parts of it. First of all, for the cellist participants, like basically for any cellist, we have from 7 to 70 years old, from community members, students, from beginners all the way to teachers and professionals. And particularly this year, we have cellists from all over Utah, Nevada, and California.
Wow!
And 2 days of workshops. We have master classes, lectures. and chamber music making, and of course, one important thing that I do a lot is cello ensemble, which is basically an orchestra of just cellos to play. And so that's one part of it. That is it's kind of like a big conference and retreat for cellists,
Right.
And then the other part, of course, is we perform 3 different concerts, and one of them is Fridays, and in the evening is the festival faculty concert where they feature the guest and local cello teachers, some solo music, and we will finish up with the famous quintet by Schubert Trout Quintet with me and some of my colleagues from Dixie State University. And then Saturday afternoon, we will have the Fresno State Cello Ensemble, guest ensemble coming from California, and joined by Dixie State Cello Ensemble as well, and some local artists. And then Saturday night, we'll have a big cello ensemble concerts. And these 3 concerts are open to the public.
Oh, fantastic.
So we have the part for the cellists. We also have the other part open to the public. And we also have 2 classes. One particularly is parents' role in music studies,
right.
in lessons. So parents are welcome to join and to talk about, because sometimes we focus on like the kids, how are they going to learn music, but parents have a very important role in it, and we love to have a great discussion session. And then we also have one workshop of cello maintenance and setup. So
there's a lot of hands-on people can do. They can come learn how to maintain a cello. They can come learn from others how to play the cello, how to listen to the cello.
Yeah. So basically, one of my main things, so that it's an event for everyone, and for cellists and for non-cellists, for cellist lovers, and for people who are less familiar with the music that we're doing. So,
well, I do have to tell you, I came in. It was about 2 years ago. And I came in on a weekend, we often see each other, off hours here and such. And I came in, I've never seen so many people walking around looking like turtles in my life. There were all these people, and, large and small. You had young people and old people, and they had these cellos on their backs. And it was actually rather daunting, kind of like these military juggernaut people walking. I was surrounded. But what a wonderful, wonderful thing. And is this something you just started here? Did you plant the seeds of it in some of the places you were before?
So, yeah, this actually comes a little bit from where I came from. So when I was in Indiana University doing my master's, they had that cello ensemble there. There's a famous Eva Yenser Memorial concert every year that they do. With Emilio Colon, a famous cellist there, still teaching there, and organized cello ensemble. And then elsewhere in the East Coast, there's a Yale cellos that perform a lot and make a lot of recordings. And cello is just an instrument. We are fortunate. We have a large range from the bass line, register, all the way to top register that we could play beautiful lyrical and nice melodies up, so we could play together, and cellists like to play together anyway.
It's a whole culture, a whole
it's
society.
A culture. It's part of us, because you think about it, if you are of course every instrument has its own characteristics, like violin and flutes and piano. They all have beautiful solo music written for them. And for cello, a lot of time we're so used to like playing as accompaniment.
Right.
We support the bass line. We play in quartet. We play in orchestra. But once in a while, we kind of took the melody and we were excited. Oh, I played a melody there. But we are a team worker. We are so used to following. But on the other hand, we kind of collaborate with people. So this idea of harmony, I really like that. And so when I first came here, I thought, well, I actually know some cellists here. I know some, but they,
the cellists find each other
right,
wherever they are.
Right. But what about if we organize them all together and play something? And so that came to the idea that 2015. That was when I first came here, and about November at that time, I think, wait, Christmas is about to come. Right. Why don't we play some Christmas music? So at that time, I was I'm I'm a member of the Southwest Symphony Orchestra. I'm the principal cellist there. In fact, we have concert tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic! That actually wasn't the intention, but great that we can get that out there.
But anyway, so I decided to talk to the cellist in the cello section of the symphony and say, hey, why don't we, read some music together? And I also talked to some of my students, cello students, college and pre-college students, and then so we have our first reading session of Christmas music for cello ensemble, and as a cello, together. It's about, at that time it was about 15 or 20 people. So and then we all enjoy very much, and I realized that actually this is this is actually from another tradition that they had. They actually, before the Dixie State University Cello Festival, there's the Black Loaf Cello Festival here.
Black Loaf.
Yeah. A while ago, but so I decided, well, that's good. We can continue the tradition and also build from there.
Right.
And then in 2016 February, we decided maybe we should form something more permanent. And so we decided, and then we established today the Cello Society of Southern Utah.
Fantastic. A whole society that's founded.
Yeah. So it's part of that is to continue the cello ensemble playing that we do regularly. But we also organize some, classes for beginners, and then we get, some guest artists to come by and perform, cellists.
Well, I'll tell you, you provided for me 2 recordings, actually, that we would like to broadcast today.
Yes.
Tell us, we've got 2. One that I mentioned earlier, not this particular version, but I mentioned Danny Boy, a song that was quite poignant. Let's see, we have a recording here. Who is it that's playing Danny Boy in this recording?
In this recording is a few of the cellists, cello teachers in town, as well as my college students here at Dixie State, in fact, cello students. And we had cello ensemble rehearsal last Saturday, and we decided to, hey, maybe we should do a little recording, and and because these 2 pieces, these selections, besides the Danny Boy and the next one, will be also on the program for the cello festival. So we decided, maybe we could share with the community.
Fantastic. Well, let's give this a listen. I'll tell you, that one always gets to me, whoever performs it. But how wonderful. You mentioned before that all of the low tones and the high tones and all of the different possibilities from the cello can work together. What a wonderful example of that.
Yes, indeed.
That's right. And we also have a second recording here.
Right.
And what is this one that we're going to be listening to?
This is called the Highland Led, and it's folk arrangement.
Okay.
Cello ensemble.
And this, I understand, is a little more up-tempo than Danny Boy? Yeah, let's pick up the tempo here just a little bit and get this party started.
Right.
You know, I have to tell you, if that sounded a lot like Danny Boy, you are absolutely right. It was Danny Boy, as a matter of fact. We have actually several screens opened on our computer right now. Thank you for pointing that out, Kawhi. I was listening to it saying, I don't think this is up-tempo. But anyhow, let's get this second one going. Right.
Faster.
This is Highland Lad. That was a little bit up-tempo, I will tell you. And for those of you who are listening, I would encourage you, go to Facebook to Radio St. George or find us on YouTube. Whether now or later, if you could see Kawhi, who is usually a very meek individual, I'm going to tell you. Very quiet in the hallways, very polite and such. But to hear him speak so animatedly about music and cello, especially to watch him listen to these songs, is just an absolute joy. Now, I do want to ask you, those are beautiful, by the way, examples of cellos working together, if you will, cellos on the march. I am interested in your resume as well, that you seem to be working with a specific type of music quite a bit, and on a different instrument, the viola da gamba. Could you explain to us what that is?
So viola da gamba, or viol, the bass viol, it's an instrument particularly used in Renaissance and Baroque at that time, around the same time when the violin family is invented. It's a fret string with frets, single string instrument with frets, and actually more guitar-like instrument, but it's still played with a bow. And I am very interested in playing period instruments. That means playing instruments at that particularly historical time. And for example, playing Bach's music using the instrument that might be, at that time most appropriate, and performing the same music written for that instrument specifically. So the viol is an instrument. So like when the violin's family is particularly being used in a lot of dance music, the viol music, V-I-O-L, viol. And by the way, viola da gamba, there are different types of viol. There's the treble viol, the smaller ones, and then there's the tenor viol, alto viol, and bass viol. Bass viol is what we call, the being most used most often, and viola da gamba actually simply means viola playing between the legs. Gamba means the legs.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
that's how they hold the instrument. So and viol being used much more in the court, more noble, quieter instrument, quite different from the more projecting violin families. So instruments. I enjoy doing both, and I also play a little Baroque cello as well. I'm in a group. The Cosmopolitan Baroque, where I play with a harpsichordist and a Baroque violinist, and then also a early 12th Baroque flutist, playing music in various periods, in the Baroque period and earlier music.
Well, I have to ask, and this is one of the joys about doing a radio show like this. Yes, it's for the listeners. Yes, it's to introduce. Yes. I've got a question. Have you ever seen the movie Tous les matins du monde?
Absolutely, yes.
Gotcha.
Right.
With Gerard Depardieu, and of course a French movie. And I don't know exactly what instrument that was.
That's exactly. That's the viol.
Oh, fantastic. And this is my unofficial plug for that movie. It is one of the most beautiful artistic movies I've seen. It is in French, so be prepared for some subtitles. but a beautiful, beautiful movie that,
Yes.
that really gets into the passion of this instrument.
Right, right.
Gotcha. And I do have actually a recording that I would love to play a bit of, if nothing else. Would you be willing to share some of your work with us?
Absolutely.
This is by Marin Marais. Am I pronouncing that
Yes,
correctly?
Marais.
Let's see. And this is Suite number 1 in A minor from Book number 3, Pièce de Viol, Prelude. And this is Kawai Yu on the viola da gamba and also Sonia Lee on the harpsichord. Let's give this a listen. And as much as it pains me to do this, because that was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And the passion that you can hear in your playing is extraordinary. And again, I encourage anybody, check out Radio St. George. The reason I keep saying this is you've got to listen to this guy, Kawai Yu. Listen to this music. It's absolutely inspiring. Now, please know that you do have a website.
I do. Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to hear more, tell us about that website.
It's www.yukawai.com, and it's just my own personal website, and you have recordings about me and bio about me, about my teaching, and you can even read a little bit about my research, scholarly research, and yeah.
I think looking at the website right now, and of course, just to reiterate, that's www.yukawai.com. I'd highly recommend you check this out. As I was doing my stalking earlier, I was having a grand old time with this website. There are many, many recordings on here that you could really fill your day with, frankly. A lot of different styles, and again, the passionate playing here. But I do encourage you, check it out just to get to know this artist. As well, most of the artists that we have here on the show do have their own websites and such. We're going to start actually promoting those. You mentioned that there was a concert tomorrow night with the Southwest Symphony. What are some of the details on that?
Oh, actually, tomorrow we are playing for the opening ceremony for the hospital, the new hospital.
Oh, fantastic!
Building. Yeah. So. But yeah,
not a concert necessarily, but a performance.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
that's tomorrow afternoon, and we're playing a lot of different selections from there.
Well, and you also mentioned your cello, the group and the ensembles, and the big event coming up.
Yes.
How does someone become a part of that?
So, well, if you're a cellist, definitely invite you to to register. It's still not too late to register. We still have a few days.
Can you do that online?
Yes, it's online.
Okay.
And I could send you the link. It's on if you go to music.dixie.edu and the department website, music department website, you should be able to find the link and click on the cello festival, and you will be able to register online there, or contact me if you have problem or questions regarding that. Yeah, we welcome any cellist of if you're saying, oh yeah, my child just started to learn the cello not long ago, we do actually have quite a bit of support for beginners and their music that we actually have two groups in the cello festival. There's the festival ensemble that play more advanced music. And then there's also the ensemble Bravo. I call it Bravo because it's the youthful and they're the future of the tomorrow, and that group is particularly for less experienced players, including beginners. So there will be teachers particularly going to work with them on the music that is suitable at that level of playing. Of course, if you're a pro, come on, join us. But anyway, we definitely do invite audience members to support, to come to one of the 3 concerts, and they're all free.
Fantastic.
Admission. So the first I mentioned earlier, it's the first one is Friday night, 7:30, in the Echoes Concert Hall. Mm-hmm. And then that's the festival faculty recital. And then the chamber concert with the guest ensemble will be Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, also in Echoes Concert Hall. And then we will conclude the whole festival with the final festival on the cello ensemble concert at 7:30 Saturday night in the Echoes main stage.
Fantastic. Well, Kawai, I'm sorry to say we are out of time at this point.
Oh.
The time absolutely flies by. Please do, if you're listening to this show and you have any interest whatsoever in cellos or cello music, or even getting to know Kawai a little better, what he's set up for us here in St. George, please go to Dixie or music.dixie.edu
Yes.
and click on the Cello Festival. Find out some more information. Please do join us on Thursday as well at 4 o'clock, where we'll have Heidi Anderson, a professional theater artist, does all elements of theater, and also the director of Young Frankenstein, which is going to be opening at the Stage Door Theater on Thursday night, September 13th, the birthday of one of the most well-known radio commentators around here. That would be me. And please do continue to join us at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays to get to know some of these secret artists here in town that we don't want to be secrets anymore. And until we talk again, remember to keep your focus on the arts.